And good evening now. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday, February 7th, as we recap what happened in the courtroom today in the Alex Murdaugh double murder trial. The disgraced attorney is accused of shooting and killing his wife Maggie and son Paul in June of 2021. And today's testimony was wide-ranging, from Murdaugh's alleged financial crimes to gunshot residue being found on Murdaugh. And we're going to start with that gunshot residue testimony from Megan Fletcher. She's a forensic scientist with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division. Fletcher says the gunshot residue was found on Murdaugh's shirt and shorts, but she doesn't know when or how it got there. She also says a large amount of gunshot residue was found on the inside of that blue raincoat that was introduced into evidence just yesterday.
13 particle lifts collected from the exterior of the jacket, and I did find particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue on it.
Now, what does that mean?
That jacket could have been in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm, or something that had gunshot residue on it could have transferred to that object. I can't tell you when that happened or how it happened.
Was there a lot of gunshot primer residue inside of the jacket?
I would say there were a significant number of particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue on the inside of this jacket, yes.
How many did you determine?
I confirmed 38 particles characteristic.
Fletcher added that one particle of gunshot residue was found on Murdaugh's hands on the night of the murders, none found on his shoes. Now, Ronnie Crosby was on the stand for several hours today. He's an attorney who worked with Murdaugh at the very same law firm. Crosby previously testified without a jury present about money that Murdaugh allegedly stole from the law firm. Judge Newman ruling yesterday that the financial allegations would be allowed in as evidence, so jurors hearing that testimony. Today, Crosby answered questions on a number of topics. He described a meeting in September of 2021 where he says he was presented with evidence that Alex Murdaugh was stealing from the law firm.
I'd sat for a minute and reviewed it. I think Danny said, "You're going to need a drink." And so...
Did you have a drink?
Yeah, ultimately more than one.
What happened after that?
Well, they didn't tell me what was in it. They let me review it on my own. And I immediately said, this is bad. And my words then were that we have to terminate Alex. He cannot no longer practice with us.
Well, Crosby also says he was at the crime scene the night of the murders. He said that Murdaugh told him he had not been down to the dog kennels before finding the bodies of his wife and son. Prosecutors then showed Crosby the video from Paul Murdaugh's cell phone that was taken at the kennels shortly before the shootings. He says he heard Alex Murdaugh's voice on that tape. Take a listen.
Did you recognize any voices on that video?
The three voices on that video are the voices of Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
And how sure are you? How sure are you?
I'm 100% sure that's whose voices are on the audio there.
And earlier in the day, Jeannie Seckinger back on the stand testifying for several hours. You remember she was on the stand last week testifying before the judge, but today in front of the jury. She was the chief financial officer at Murdaugh's law firm at the time of the murders. She says Murdaugh was depositing money owed to the law firm directly into his own accounts.
The majority of those instances that involve client money, did Alex Murdaugh also receive substantial legal fees in each one of those cases?
Yes.
And in each one of those cases in which that happened, at least on the ones we've gone through, according to your review, did he also misappropriate substantial money on top of that?
Yes.
How long have you known Alex Murdaugh?
Since I was 16, so about 40 years.
Worked with him closely for how long?
22, 23 years.
Did you really know Alex Murdaugh?
I don't think I ever really knew him. I don't think anybody knows him.
So a lot of developments in court today. We're going to bring in Taylor Bell, a criminal defense attorney here in the Columbia area. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Perhaps the biggest testimony of the day here so far, that gunshot residue testimony, which came in the last few minutes of testimony today.
Yeah, that was interesting here today, hearing that. I knew the raincoat was going to come into play at some point today.
Right. So how big of a deal is the gunshot residue testimony from this SLED agent on the stand today?
So I think it's going to depend on how the government can connect it to Alec. I think that's going to be the key here. It's left a lot of questions because there was no cross-examination today. Cross-examination on this witness will be tomorrow. In my head, I've theorized how they're playing this role of the gunshot residue being on the inside of the raincoat. You think if they said he was going to be wearing it, it would have on the outside. So my thought process is down the road, are they going to say that the guns were wrapped up in this raincoat?
I would imagine that defense attorneys are also going to say, look, he had a lot of guns on the property. He was shooting guns on the property a good bit of the time. You know, his property's so big and he's got so many guns. That's probably something that the defense might put out there tomorrow.
I absolutely believe that's going to be put out as well tomorrow. I think there's going to be some cross-examination on also false positives for GSR or gunshot residue of, you know, other things that occur in the environment related to vehicles that can produce GSR or false positives for GSR as well. I believe that will come through in testimony, as well as testimony regarding, all right, you're in the vicinity of the where gunshots were and transfer of GSR.
Typically, how long does gunshot residue stay on someone's hands or an article of clothing or on a seatbelt in this case? How long could it last? How long could it be there and be detected?
On an article like a raincoat, which typically you don't wash, I think it could last for a substantial period of time, if not, you know, indefinitely until something was washed off. Hands are a different story. Hands we touch, transfer particles off of our hands each and every day, every time we grab a doorknob, shake hands, wash our hands regularly, grab forks to eat. So I think coming off of your hands is going to be not, the length of time is not going to be as long.
Is it a big deal that only one particle of gunshot residue was found on his hand?
I think that for the state, they have a very good alternative to that, as he washed his hands. That's not a, you know, that's not an unheard of thing for somebody to do. However, you know, the idea of the GSR being inside of the raincoat, to me, we're going to have to see how the state connects the dots there.
His former co-worker Ronnie Crosby testifying today. They played that videotape in court at the dog kennels. Again, Murdaugh had told authorities he was asleep, taking a nap, hadn't been down to the dog kennels, but his former colleague testifying today, 100% positive, that is the voice of Alex Murdaugh in the video that was taken, according to the state, about 8:45 that evening.
Yeah, that video and his former law partner, again, you know, we had previous testimony of a close family friend identifying the voice, having his own law partner identify his voice in that video, and then also testifying that he said he wasn't down at the kennels specifically. That was damaging, very damaging for the defense in the theory of their alibi that he was not there.
And this is the first time you've joined us since the financial crimes, the allegations of financial crimes, the testimony about that being allowed into evidence. Is that going to be a bigger deal in this trial now? I mean, how will the defense handle this going forward?
Well, you know, the best for them is for it have not come in.
Right.
It's one of those things that you have to accept the bad facts. The bad fact now is, as a defense attorney, this evidence of financial crimes is coming in. So how do we deal with this? How do we minimize this impact it has on our client? One approach may be to own it. Down the road, you may see the defense own these financial crimes. I think owning it, accepting it, saying, yes, he committed all these bad acts of stealing money to support his opioid addiction, but he's not a murderer.
All right, so, but if Alex Murdaugh has to take the stand and testify on his own behalf, which he doesn't have to, but if he decides to do that, do you think he's going to answer any questions about these alleged financial crimes?
So when you look at you got to take into account what he's being sentenced for. Murder in South Carolina is day for day. Financial crimes is not a day for day sentence. So, you know, you've got to have that conversation with your client and say, hey, are you willing to, you know, have this talk on the witness stand and accept responsibility for these things? And what is his ultimate goal? Because, you know, from the get-go, the attorneys have been dead set that he did not commit this murder. And you've got to take it from your client's position. What is his position in relationship to the financial crimes? He's already been disbarred from the South Carolina bar. He's not looking at trying to get his law license back at any time. So how does he want to approach this? And that's a conversation he's going to have with his client, the attorneys are.
What's next in this trial as far as the state is concerned? They're presenting that financial evidence now, but what's next? We heard the gunshot residue testimony, the financial allegations of financial crimes today. What else is there for them to put up?
I think they're going to continue to put up these witnesses related to the financial crimes. I also believe we're going to hear from pathologists as to the manner of death, cause of death. We're going to hear from that. That's going to have to come in. I think we're also going to hear some further experts relating to gunshots and the proximity. We're going to hear that. I think there's a lot that we're going to hear in relationship to, I believe there's this other guy out there named Cousin Eddie that I think we may hear from. I'm not sure what he has to say, but we're going to hear from him because apparently he's been listed on the witness list here.
This is a trial, I guess, with no hard physical evidence so far, circumstantial evidence. A lot of that's being presented right now. That's
correct. There is no, hard physical evidence to specifically say we eyewitness saw him do this. They're using circumstantial evidence as part of the phones and the videos, and just trying to break it apart and put him there at the scene, that he's the only possible person that could have done this, and so that's the conclusion that the jury should reach.
Right, and at this point, do you believe, at this point, with everything that you've seen unfold in court so far, do you believe that Alex Murdaugh will have to take the stand in his own defense to explain some of these things?
I think there's a lot of explanations that are going to be necessary. The financial crimes for the defense is devastating. It's absolutely devastating because even with the limiting instructions that Judge Newman gives relating to the purpose for which this evidence can come in, I think the jury is going to make their decisions based on their emotions and their feelings about the person as an individual. It's one of those, I said from the beginning, it's one of those decisions that you make at the end, but it's looking more and more likely like he may need to take the witness stand to explain this away.
So far, the state probably feels pretty confident in their case right now. You're a defense attorney, you're a criminal defense attorney. If you were trying this case, how would you be feeling right now?
Well, again, I'd be very worried about the financial crimes coming in. I think that was a huge blow, and I will continue to say that. You got to keep moving forward. You can't think about that. I've heard there have been some mock juries out there asking about the motive theory of the government. So you're going to have to somehow, from the defense, debunk this motive theory that the state has, that this was somehow going to extend this, catching up with him.
Right.
Essentially, there's been testimony that this was only extended it by 30 days.
Right.
And that just doesn't seem logical, to kill your wife and your son for a 30-day reprieve.
Yeah, the motive, I believe they're saying something about this was done as a distraction to the financial crimes they say he committed, trying to buy himself some more time.
I find that hard to believe, but then again, you had a witness today saying that he's erratic, irrational. That may go along with what the state ties in at the end, though.
And the financial testimony that was in court today from Jeannie Seckinger, testifying that he was confronted on the morning of the murders and as late as 4 o'clock in the afternoon about this nearly $800,000 that was missing. A jury hears that, and then the last, he's being confronted about it at 4 o'clock. About 4 hours and 50 minutes later, his wife and his son are dead.
Again, that right there, you don't know whether he was, the argument is he wasn't acting rational.
Right.
And he was acting erratic and irrational, which would make sense to explain for the state there.
Right.
From a rational person's perspective, that doesn't make sense.
All right, Taylor Bell, criminal defense attorney here in Columbia. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Testimony is going to resume 9:30 in the morning, and we're expecting the defense to cross-examine Fletcher, the sled agent who testified about the crime, the gunshot residue on Murdaugh's hands and on his seatbelt and on some of his clothing. That gets underway at 9:30 tomorrow morning. You can watch on WLTX Plus. You can watch on our YouTube channel and on WLTX.com. And of course, we have our team down there covering the trial as well. We'll have full coverage tomorrow on News 19. We hope to see you then.